at my heartstrings. I found a couple of these on Twitter and it really brought a tear to my eye. My great-grandfather had a monopoly of eggs in all of China, and my grandmother was super rich living in a mansion when the Cultural Revolution happened and communism took everything away. The Soviet scum invaded my country with the Nazis and then occupied us for 44 years. They took most of my family's properties, our castles and our servants. Those bastards even took my grandma's favourite pony. She cried about this for decades. You are ignorant and know absolutely nothing about history to be claiming that. I had my grandfather's coconut factory stolen, my family's only source of income, in the 50s when they reclaimed it and housed corrupt governmental activities. Shame on you. That land where the farms were not inhabited before the Boers showed up. The blacks shouldn't have taken what is not theirs. Just like the Nasser Arab socialists shouldn't have taken my grandfather's plantation. Truly heart-wrenching stuff there. Who cannot sympathise with a family losing everything, such as their coconut plantation, or the land stolen from native Africans, or the monopoly on eggs in China, or castles in Eastern Europe? Who cannot sympathise? So today...
Okay, so just today I saw this leftist, communist, Marxist YouTuber on YouTube trying to talk to us about criticism of communism by victims of communist dictatorships, by victims of communist regimes in history, whether it's in China, whether it's in Russia, Cuba, what have you, right? And instead of empathizing with the victims, right, many of whom, lost their lives just because, right, just because they simply do not have the favor of the Communist Party, just because they exist, as entities who are not even openly against the Communist Party, but against the so-called values which are also, ever-changing and depending on the whims and fancies of the dictator, just because, right? It may not be that they are all wealthy, rich, capitalists. They can be anyone, right? As long as you are so happen, right, to be against the dictator's whims and fancies of the time, right? You can lose your life, you can be jailed, you can be imprisoned for life, you can be silenced, you can be put in the mental asylum, what have you. There are many, many ways the communist regime can torture you, can make you suffer, or in any case, make you disappear. But instead of empathizing with these sort of victims and at least criticizing, at least having reservations like most leftist Marxists have of communist regimes, right? Because according to the majority of these people, the way to explain away these mass murders that happen in these communist regimes is that those are not true communism, those are not true Marxism, those are the people who did it the wrong way. And we are here to do it the right way, the correct way. Yeah, I mean, they are fooling themselves, but at least they acknowledge, right, that there is this undeniable fact that many people sacrifice for nothing. But instead of going that route, this YouTuber, just this morning when I was watching how he tries to hoodwink us on how good communism is and how bad the criticism of communism is, he takes aim, at many of the communist regimes' past victims' complaints or condemnations of the Communist Party, in a sense that, I used to be this monopoly of eggs in China. When the Communist Party came, my family lost the business, my family lost everything we had. And then another victim in Russia, maybe, he was used to be an owner of a plot of land, a coconut plantation, what have you. And then, I'm so sad to have lost everything. Same thing in Cuba. You were once this very rich family who owns la 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 la, and then because the Communist Party took over, wow, how sad, how we should grieve with these people. And then of course he's using a sarcastic tone, saying that, wow, what have you lost? You have lost, you have made so much money, based on being a monopoly, based on being a capitalist. And when the Communist Party takes over, you lost everything and we are supposed to feel sad, right? So he uses this, victims are not really victims. Sounds familiar? Victims are not really victims kind of argument to tell us that communism isn't so bad. We are stealing from the rich to give to the poor, to share among everyone equally, la 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 la, all these very fairy tale like stories to argue for the sake of communism against the idea, of capitalism, which means that the successful is very successful and has more resources than you, in some ways, enjoying life more than you. But what is not mentioned here are many, many things. First of all, right, there is no mention of how these so-called rich capitalists have fought their way, right, to climb up the ranks, to climb up this ladder. Not every rich person in this world inherited their wealth from their fathers or earlier generations who were rich. And even if they inherited it, so what, right? That person who made the fortune in the first place, how did he get it? Did he get it by whining and complaining and being a victim all day, or did he work hard to achieve what he did, right? And by the way, who is to say that the rich will stay rich forever, right? That the rich family, in Chinese we have a saying, 富不过三代. The wealth doesn't follow you past 3 generations, right? So, and that's social mobility for you, right? The rich can become poor, the poor can become rich just based on how you manage your wealth, you manage your finances, and la la la, etc. Right? I mean, even if you have millions and billions of dollars, if you don't manage the wealth properly, you just waste it, you do the wrong investments, you can lose it all, right? Or maybe when you meet a communist government, you can also lose it all. So is it really very stable? Is it really 100% guaranteed wealth? No, there's no such thing in this world, right? So every cent one person has, as long as he earned it honestly, and of course there's going to be a lot of argument here as to what is honest and what is not. I mean, I do admit, that there are definitely cases of dishonest business. There are many, if not a hell lot of these capitalists who actually gain their wealth through unscrupulous means. I'm not denying that at all. But that doesn't mean capitalism as a system itself is wrong. It doesn't mean that the system that allows people to rise the ranks is wrong. How can it be? How can it be that a system that forces everyone to be equally poor is better? How? Right? Whatever wealth the communist regime claims to have to share with others, they got it, they stole it from those who had. Right? Those who earned their keep through capitalism. So this whole argument of capitalists are all bad, already it is making a flaw, in not recognizing the many victims who are not even rich in the first place of communism. And secondly, even if you are targeting this small group, of very previously wealthy individuals who lost their family wealth to communism, and saying and trying to convince us that, maybe they don't deserve pity, maybe we don't need to feel sorry for them, and maybe, the communist system is so much better. Even if it were the case, that these people were greedy, fucking monopolistic providers to the whole country of China, and then, they lost it all and now have to, share it with others. Is communism still better? Because what communism means, if we were to follow the book of true communism, what it means is that now the state and not any individual becomes the monopoly of control of all resources in the country. How is that better? How is it better when instead of individuals, monopolistic as they may be, but still subject to competition any time. How is that worse? How is that gonna be worse than when you have the state unchecked, unbalanced? You know, when no one can say they are wrong. How are you going to be so sure, you know, to put all your trust in this one dictator or dictatorial ruling class that they are gonna make the best decisions for all of you, you know, then they are going to ensure that productivity is going to be multiplied just based on sharing equally with everyone. That no matter how hard or how much you work, you will get the same based on what you need. This is an insane. Anybody who believes that this kind of system can be better is absolutely intellectually insane. Okay? So, even, you know, if we were to just target this small group of victims of communism, even though there are so many more other innocent victims, even if we were to target this small group of greedy capitalists, the argument doesn't hold. The argument doesn't stand, simply because the ruling Communist Party that takes over control of these resources is itself the biggest monopoly of all, thus annihilating and negating all your argument against monopoly, because now you have the state being the monopoly of everything, not just of eggs, right? It is the monopoly of all resources in the country: water, electricity, oil, cars. How is that better? And coupled with that, the lowering of productivity because people simply choose to be lazy because it is rewarded. How is that better? Every time we see arguments for Marxism, communism, socialism on the left, I really want to say no, right? Because, and this is the most insidious form of leftism, which the American left has basically abandoned because it is so unconvincing, right? And they have moved towards other forms of identity politics in terms of race, in terms of gender and what have you, because arguing for Marxism is too unconvincing for the American people, right? This bloody idea can only be tried in some parts of Europe, maybe. It is very sad. It is very sad to see people living in absolute capitalism, people enjoying the fruits of absolute capitalism, complain about capitalism. Seriously. The people in Cuba, China, North Korea will willingly switch places with you anytime. And are you willing to go live your entire life in North Korea, where you don't have the freedom to tweet or to twitch your bloody asses on Twitter, X, TikTok? Go ahead. No one is stopping you. Go ahead. So, but of course, I do acknowledge, you know, just as Konstantin Kisin has pointed out, the real reason, you know, for people to accept socialism as something viable is the failure, you know, of these neo-lib, neo-con, so-called free market capitalist systems themselves in providing, you know, enough good livelihood to everyone. You know, that is the real reason, because whereas decades ago in capitalist societies, you have wealth, you have, you know, flourishing of the economy, people had good enough jobs to earn a living, to have afford housing. Nowadays, you know, everything is expensive, cost of living, public housing, housing in general, because only in Singapore where we have public housing that is almost 80% of the population, and yet it's still expensive. right? Other countries, they have, it's private, but then, it's unaffordable. And because of that, people are saying, this system is breaking down, and therefore, why not we look at communism? Why not we look at socialism? So Constantine is right that, we need to solve our problem, right? But that's not an argument for communism. That's an argument against, this failure of our systems itself, failing in every measure possible based on true free market principles, because we have many monopolies and oligarchies that control the economy, that control the narrative, what we call woke capitalism, and that needs to stop, and that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be improved in order for people to finally understand, that maybe capitalism is still working for them, right? So, yeah.